How's it going? My name's Andy. Welcome to the Latin Fernie YouTube channel, and today I'm going to be working on some borders for my upcoming prayer book, the Warrior's Prayer Book. You can find more information on what the Warrior's Prayer Book is on my website, which is Latin Fernie, so the spelling of my YouTube channel, .blogspot.com. I'll have that highlighted here on the screen in post, but let's go over here to my overhead cam. And today I'm just going to be going through my process on how I've been working on these borders. For the past couple of days, I've been experimenting with different techniques in order to copy complementary styles from my illuminated letters so that they can become not just a single piece of art in one corner of the beginning of a chapter heading, say, but that the entire page or parts of a page can then tie both the text and the illuminated letter together. And so as you can see here, this is one style, which is just the prayer rope or rosary with leaves attached to them. Now, if you look at my actual manuscript and the illuminated letters for it, like this letter H here, let me try to get up close. You can see here, you got the gold and the black and the little prayer rope with the rosary cross at the top around that spear. I have several letters that are like that, and so that's one of the designs I'm doing for this book. Another one is going to be a little bit simpler, but still matches the color palette, where it has this more geometric frame looking style. And then also I have one, let me see if I can find it here. Aha, this is my favorite. So here, this actually, let me try to get it in the frame. Hopefully you can see that okay. So this is a crown of thorns style, and that pairs up well with any of the illustrations I have that include something like this letter D, where there's a dove being sacrificed, and having little spurts of blood here and there, tying that theme in with each other, that of suffering, that of the Christian saints dying for the testimony of the Word of God. It's going to be all-encompassing, making the artwork one with just the beauty of the apocalypse, of the revelation of God. And so anyway, the next step for me now that I have at least 4 of the 5 different styles of borders, at least in actual print in one format, I'm going to create those styles in numerous different iterations so that hopefully I'll be able to mix and match which border and which transition works for each specific setting, whether it's for the rosary pamphlet section, whether it's for the beginnings of chapters, the ends of chapters, you name it. I have something for either myself or for whoever typesets and graphic designs the book for publishing to work in and to still make it look beautiful. And so with that said, today I'm going to be continuing this vine rosary theme with this 1-inch and 1.5-inch corner respectively here. Now I have already a 2-inch, a 3-inch corner, and a 2, a 3, and a 4-inch line, but again, having more options is always going to work out better for illustrating, and so that's why I'm going with this. And so with that, let's get into materials. Okay, so for materials, pretty basic. So I have a few different pencils, just making sure that they're sharp. A block eraser. I can cut this down to size if I want a little more fine work, but for most situations, this white one works great. A few different kinds of micron pens. So these you can get at like any craft store, like Michael's or Joann's, something like that. Mine I have at 0.02 millimeters, 0.03, 0.08, and 1 millimeter. And so this I will show how I actually outline my pieces after I'm done penciling in. I have some white gel pens. They're called jelly rolls, and these really improve the quality of my work, especially in making shadows and sheen and creating more of a three-dimensional look to some of my drawings. Also made by Jelly Roll is this gold pen here. Now I also had a Micron red brush style pen, so it was like this but bright red, and the tip was actually like a brush, which was pretty cool. I can't find it for some reason, so I've just been going back to using some watercolor. This is Crimson Red Lake paint, and I just got this from a $10 set that I bought at Walmart when I first started painting. So with that, I'm going to get into my process and how I make each of these floral borders. So starting here, well, one thing I need to mention, so before I actually start drawing freehand the curves of the vine, I have to get at least the main shape, the overall dimensions of the border correct. And so how I did this was I took this cabinet maker's square made by Veritas, and I basically just center it on the workpiece, center it on the sketch pad here, and then I just mark from 1 inch to 1 inch and just make that corner, and then I just flipped it 180 degrees and did the same thing except at 1.5 inches. And the same was done with the larger borders where there's only one on each piece of sketch pad, as well as for each of these lines here. I just made sure that there was enough of a margin so that I don't accidentally reach to the very end of the page, because when I'm putting it on the scanner, it's always important to have a little bit of extra space just in case the scanning tool doesn't pick up 100% of the sketch pad. Okay, so now that I have this done, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just trace with my pencil just a curvy line, and let me do this on the 1 inch one. The one tip I should say, because I kind of messed up on this side, so let me just do it again. Okay, so what I did here is, see if the camera can focus. That's good enough. So I actually, instead of starting at the edge, I want to make sure that this loop actually peaks right at the corner of the piece. And so I actually start in the center, make sure that there's a nice loop there. And while it doesn't have to be perfectly symmetrical, I do want there to be a fairly consistent gap in these little sine waves that go to and fro around the actual contours of the corner. And then make sure that it meets, if not at the very same place, to a close enough place at the end on each side. And so I'm just going to redo that for the 1.5 inch, and then we will go from there. Okay, so now I took a little more time and I made sure that the 1.5 inch now actually meets in the center with a curve. And so it looks a little sloppy at this point, but that's the nice thing, is when it's in pencil you can always erase it later. And so I will show you guys what I do next. So now that I have the main contours just for that center line, I'm going to take my 0.8 millimeter pen, and I'm going to just draw right over top of the curvy line here. And so I just like to take my time, make sure that it's a consistent width. Because it's a felt tip pen, it will expand the amount of ink that it lays down the more that you press on it, or the longer that you press down on the sketch pad. And so that's what I'm doing here. Let me do it on this other one. Okay, there. So a lot easier to see now. I have those two lines for the 1 and 1.5 inch corners ready to go. And now at this point, I'm definitely doing a time lapse on this part. I'm going to be now tracing the actual leaves and roses that you see here over top and on the sides of each of these. And so I'm going to do a couple and just show what that looks like up close, and then I will complete the rest and show you what it looks like once all of the sketches are done. Okay, so I'm going to try to get this nice and close here so y'all can see it. There we go. So basically what I did was I put one 3-prong leaf at the end, 3-prong leaves on the top and bottom, and then I have, it's kind of hard to see with my camera, but you can see here it's a little buttercup or rose shape outline, which is just a U shape with a little oval on the top. And so what I like to do is I like to try to change around the order, the direction of where the leaves are pointing, and then also make sure that there's enough coverage around each of the sides of the line without it being overwhelming. So that takes a little bit of time and practice to know what looks good aesthetically to balance the vine. There you go, that's nice. And so yeah, I'm just going to try to continue the same sort of pattern and make sure that there's going to be like, I'm going to say 2 to 3 of those roses in total around that border. And I'll do the same on the other 1 inch, and we will get back to you from there. Okay, so now I've completed just the pencil sketching of both corners there. There we go. And keep in mind that the pencil doesn't have to look perfect. If there's slight deviations in what you would actually want, you can always fix that with the next step, which I'll show you now. So now I have, this is my, I'll flip this. This is my 0.3 millimeter micron. And now I'm going to fill in all of these guys, and I'll do a couple, show what that looks like, and do the rest. Okay, you can kind of see it. It's darker with that one rose and that one leaf. And so, again, I may change the actual contours a little bit when I'm putting in the ink work, but again, that's how I fill it in. And so let me finish that with the rest of this, and we'll go from there. I just wanted to say one little thing I'm noticing as I'm going through these is as I am sketching it, my leaves tend to get smaller as I go. It must be something subconscious. So what I'm doing is, you can kind of see the overlap a little bit with the ink over the pencil, but I am manually having to increase the size of some of these later petals, which is fine. I've never done a paint by number before, if you guys are familiar with those, but the biggest obstacle I think I have discovered when teaching myself how to illustrate is that with paint by numbers, you already have the ley lines, you already have the borders on what you actually need to fill in and color, and you may have a diagram, sure, of what colors go where, and that's helpful and all, but once you actually have the borders of where you need to create, it makes it a lot easier. And so the biggest obstacle with illustrating is, as long as you have some good design principles and some just technical skill as far as just having the right tools, like, whoops. As long as you have the right kinds of straight edges or curved edges or whatever to make those ley lines, the rest is actually pretty easy. And it's even easier with the style that I'm doing, which is having a limited palette of colors, because it's going to be in a printed book, so that I don't have to worry as much about having to blend different shades into each other, at least with these smaller borders and other smaller sorts of designs like this. Granted, some of those illuminated letters you'll see on my website, which there'll be a link here, they have more colors, and of course there's a lot more work that's involved there. But regardless, that's one thing I've learned. Okay. Okay, so now I have the actual pen drawing done. Look at that. Starting to look like an actual border. So now what I'm going to do is, oh yeah, I forgot one thing. So I need to now grab a thicker, this is the 1mm micron, and now I'm going to create a bunch of dots along the actual main line, and that will be signifying like the Hail Mary beads for the rosary. And so I'm going to do that now. Okay, so that's what that looks like with the dots. Definitely makes it a little bulkier, but it fits in with the theme, and so there we go. So next step is pretty important, so I don't want to forget to actually erase all of the pencil lines, because that way, otherwise the color values may not look right. It'll look a little bit more smudgy, and it also gets rid of all of the grime that transferred as my hands have rubbed across the workpiece. One skill I really need to work on is actually keeping my hand off of the workpiece as I'm drawing or painting or that kind of thing. I know if you have like a larger canvas, you have to keep your hand off so you're not like smearing the paint and messing it up. But the way that I do it, it's the same with like playing guitar for me, is I always keep my palm planted on the body of the guitar while I'm strumming or picking, and it just makes it so much easier for me to do it, even though it's not technically proper technique, and the same goes with painting. But anyway, I have to just remove those smudge marks after the fact using the eraser, which is fine. And the thing is too, once you're done scanning, you can also then put it into like Photoshop, or I just use like the Microsoft Painter and Paint Effects app that it has, like the standard one you get with your PC, and that works pretty well too, just by removing the background and stuff. And that's the other thing too. So Microsoft Painter, it actually doesn't allow you to do it except if you like pay an extra fee, like a monthly fee. Subscription models, man, crazy. But if you just press edit on the photos, if it's in JPEG format in your Photos app, it will allow you to remove background so that it's just white without having to pay an extra fee. Just a little trick that I've learned. I may do a video on how I edit my artwork in post for another time, but for now, we have removed all of the marks from the pencil, and now we just have the black. So at this point, I'm now going to start filling in my leaves and the rose petals, and that'll be it for this one. So first thing, I'm going to take my gold here. This is the gold jelly roll, and I used to use like acrylic gold metallic paint, And it works fine, but I find that for one thing, like it does dry out over time, and after like about 10-15 minutes of not touching it and not putting a little bit of water over top of the acrylic, since it's water soluble, it ends up hardening and then it doesn't flow onto the paper like I would like. The other thing too is that because you need a brush to use acrylic paint, when I'm doing really fine detail work, like with these small letters and stuff, it's not, while I still have pretty good control over my brushes, and I even will sometimes like snip off the tips of the brush heads to make sure that it will fit inside of the boundaries. Even then, sometimes it does smear. It doesn't keep a completely pointed tip, and so now that I have this jelly roll with that super fine, it's like 0.6 millimeter tip, it's been a game changer for me to actually finish these letters and now finish these borders. So with that said, I'm going to do these on one of the petals and show you all what that looks like. And I'll also do a black, and again I'm going to use the 0.3 millimeter micron. For larger pieces, I would fill in black with actual black acrylic and or watercolor paint, but for these really small projects, the marker works just fine. So as you can see here, oop, wrong corner. There we go, we got the gold and the black. And let me do a little bit of this crimson red on the rose. So now I have my little palette paper here. As you can see, I already have some red that I've used for previous projects, but I'll be right back. I'm going to grab my brushes and water to fill those in, and we will go from there. So I'll be right back. Okay, so got that. Grab some paper towels. So as far as the actual brushes I use, let me use my face cam for this. So I have, this is Artist Loft, so this is like the house brand for Michaels. And I think these are acrylic brushes, but I'm using them with watercolor. In my opinion, it doesn't make that much of a difference other than just making sure the size is correct. That's the big thing that matters for me. So with that said, this is around, let me hold it up. So the one here on the left, this is a round number 1. And then this one here, this is a round 18/0. So really small size brushes, and I'd say this round 18/0 is the one I use most often for these really small border projects. And so with that, I'm gonna mix this guy up so it's the consistency I want. I tend to like my watercolor a little bit thicker because I'm not really going for shading. I'm not really trying to do light to dark, especially with something this small. I really just need it to be one color, and so mine's not going to be overly dark. Okay. Now I'm going to do just one of these roses, just for that red base coat. Show you all what that looks like. Okay, so look at that. There we go. So now I got the red, the black, and the gold. And yeah, so I'm just going to be doing one color at a time. I just wanted to show what it looked like for each for its first coat. And so let's finish those up and I'll show you what it looks like after that step's over. I'd say just the biggest thing as I'm doing this, I just need to take my time. Whether that means creating a calming atmosphere and listening to some, nice music or a podcast, what have you. I don't want to do this while I'm in a hurry, otherwise I will bleed the colors over. And while I can, again, edit out those little areas that um, fall outside the lines in post in Photoshop, I would rather just get it right the first time. And so if you're trying to do this yourself, or if you're inspired to create a similar kind of design, just take your time, be patient with yourself. You will get better, and it will turn out cleaner and cleaner with each time you do it. So with that, let's continue. And one quick thing, as far as choosing which ones are gold and which ones are black, the leaves, I just try to alternate or make sure that around half of them are one color and then the other can balance it. And sometimes they don't have to be like on the opposite side or every other. You just got to make sure that the overall numbers are around 50-50 for the split. And that, again, looks like it's made in nature and it's not completely sterile and inorganic as a piece of art. Because that's why people hate AI art, is because it looks sterile and inorganic. And while it may be more photorealistic than most actual artists' art, it doesn't evoke anything that's real or emotional because it doesn't have emotions. It's a machine that's making it. So anyway, let's finish this up quick and we will move on to the final step. Okay, one more thing. As far as tips go, I have found that in order to get as fine of a point as you can for applying paint, at least this watercolor paint, and also for acrylic, if you combine it with watercolor and add some water to it to make it a little bit more soluble, I need to twist the actual brush head in the paint. And that way, instead of just putting the tip in, and it creates a little like, normally it would create a little droplet on the tip, and that actually makes a wider, um, it creates a wider pattern when I put it onto the workpiece. But when I actually roll it like this, it actually, for some reason, it gets rid of that droplet on the end, and it makes it that much easier for me to do these really fine, you know, not millimeter, but a little bit more than a millimeter size rows. And so now I'm just using my number 1 round, and that seems to be working all right. Okay, so now I have all of the roses done and all the leaves, and they're looking pretty good, though like with the other patterns I've done before, let's see if I can get this to zoom correctly. You can see that the roses are actually a little bit lighter. There we go. Yeah, as you can see there's a little bit of white marks on each of those, and that's intentional. I wanted to add a little bit of extra depth so it didn't look like just little, red ovals or something. Make it look more like a rose, given the theme of it being a rosary. And so with that, I am going to wait just a minute so that this red paint can dry. And then I'm going to take I can use either 0.5 or 0.8 millimeter. This one I'm going to just do the 0.8. Since when it's 0.5, sometimes there's not enough coming out of the jelly roll for it to actually change the color completely from red to white, whereas the 0.8 seems like it's a good balance of having enough of a width in the actual pen head to apply the white ink, but it's not white enough that it can bleed out over where I want it to go and apply. And so I'm going to just wait a second for that to dry, have a little bit of coffee, or what's left of it anyway. And we'll finish this up. Okay, that didn't take too long. So as you can see there, I got the little white marks on the roses, and it doesn't make a huge difference, but I try to get those little lines for the shading to be on the same side so that it's as if the light is coming at it from one direction instead of it coming from multiple directions, and it just looks a little bit less natural. Though, again, it's at this small of a size, it may not matter that much in the grand scheme of the illustrations, but anyway, that's how I like to do it. And as far as the placement, besides just the direction, what I do is I like to create like this lighting around 1/2 of the little oval on top of the rose. Let me try to get a close up so that you guys can see what I mean. Yeah, it doesn't really, I should get a better camera for this. You can kind of see it here. So I have a little circle going over top of the oval shape that I first made with the rose, okay? And then I also create a little shading around the bottom half on one side of the rose as well. And then maybe 1 or 2 lines down the center. Adds a little bit more depth, makes it a little bit more than one-dimensional, two-dimensional, and I think overall it looks pretty good. And if we do a comparison here, here are our other border designs for the book. There we go. Not too bad. For teaching myself how to do that a couple days ago, it's looking pretty good. Yeah, I think the biggest thing at this point is I need to keep organized. Obviously, I have all of these letters which are in this booklet here, and so I've given some away as I've completed them, you know, to friends, to family, that kind of thing. And so each of the letters I still have its own spot, right? And what I was doing was I was just adding, so here's a different style of border, which is more just like a standard frame, more geometrical. I've just been putting them in those same 6" by 6" photo album slots, but I actually am going to be getting an actual 3-ring binder that'll have some sheet protectors and some smaller like photo album photo savers that are like 4" by 6", so that way these cards, which are 4" by 4.5", meaning I could get 6 of these cards out of one sheet of a 12" by 9" sketch pad paper, that I can then put all of those smaller designs into those kinds of photo album protectors. And then here, let me show you, I have remaining for this specific border style, I have one more small template that's going to be, you can see here it's like a rectangle. This is going to be like what you see on the bottom of sections for missals and other kinds of liturgical books, where they have like this banner with some sort of logo, whether it's like the Sacred Heart or the Holy Spirit, a symbol of the Trinity, like a um, what's the name of those things? Like a trifoil or a quatrefoil, some sort of intricate Roman shape that then is surrounded by some other kind of design. So I'm going to have for each of the currently 5 border styles, one of those kinds of banners on the bottom. And then also, let me pull up this, I'm also going to have a full page that's blank that I'm going to then have like a border that goes on 2 sides, and then I'm going to have one that goes around all 4 sides, so that for pages where there may just be like a single psalm that is smaller, or if it's something that I want to add extra impact, extra emphasis, and it's worth having its own illumination around the entirety of the text, that's what that's for. And so whether that's going to be more dense of a design, meaning that it's going to have extra layers of like these vines and roses than normal, so that there's even smaller area where the text is going to be, or it's going to just be the same width as the rest of the borders, but it will just, again, surround the entire page. That's what that's going to be for. And then finally, I have this, it was a 12" by 9" sketch pad, but I used a trimmer and cut it down to 8.5 by 11, which is normal letter size paper. And that is going to signify like 2 pages. So what that will be is, I'll pull this back up. Imagine kind of like, as you can see, not on the screen, but on the very sides of the screen with that red leaf border, it's going to be on the 2 sides as well as the top and the bottom. So it's going to be on 3 sides of each individual page, but it actually creates a single pane which you can then insert text and other illustrations inside of it. And so that is going to be a very useful format for things like the Rosary Guide, where on one side you're going to have an illustration of the actual gospel scene or the mystery scene for things like the Ascension and the Assumption of Our Lady. And then on the other side, it's going to be the actual text of the scripture that goes along with each Hail Mary, because it's going to be a scriptural rosary guide that will, of course, be illustrated. And so that's the goal, is to have in each of those 5 styles these sorts of embellishments. Anyway, that is, I think, everything. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. My name is Andy again. Christ is King, Mary is Queen, and you are their slaves. With that, I'm going to let you guys go. Have a great rest of your day, and see you next time.